Welcome to Flow. So, before we start off, our panel title. We thought it'd be funny if we read this together, and we thought it'd be even funnier if we didn't practice it at first. So you ready?
Oh, yeah.
All right, ready? 3, 2, 1. AI and automation, early learnings from the trenches. Pretty good. All right, so who are we? No, that's not quite right.
Wait, who?
No.
Me?
There we go. Okay. So, I'm Brandon. You saw me on stage tomorrow or yesterday, whatever today is. Time is an illusion. You saw me on stage yesterday. I am the founding and managing partner of Zentop Consulting. We are a process automation consultant. We work with Roost, MeBot 365, all that good stuff. If you want to learn more, I won't sales you up here. Come see our booth in the vendor hall.
And I am Alden Wilson. I am the VCISO and DevSecOps and L3 and every other hat that anyone has to wear over at iTech Solutions.
Awesome. So we just came back from lunch. Everyone's still digesting. Let's get started with a post-lunch icebreaker.
So first off, how was food items at lunch?
Food items was really good. Alden, what's the weather like in city?
Depending on which city, wet or dry but hot still.
Those are the two options, correct?
Now, Brandon, how was your flight from airport?
It was pretty good. We had a direct flight. I don't usually go to LA, but couldn't get anything from a home airport. But oh well, I guess I didn't account for not having a layover. It wants a list. Well, moving on. So, AI. We took two different paths, didn't we?
We sure did. Competing paths, even.
Competing, even, yeah. So we've been working with AI just in general for quite a while. I remember talking with Alden at ChannelCon last year in Vegas, last August, when AI and self-hosted models were really becoming a thing. And I'm like, what the hell is a Hugging Face?
And I have been self-hosting AI since about 5 months before that meeting at ChannelCon. And I think at that point I was running it on my cell phone, kind of showing people that you don't need to be connected to the internet to get an answer from AI.
Yeah, running AI on your cell phone.
Running AI on my cell phone.
That was something that I didn't know you could do.
Oh.
I took a different path. I started using online hosted models, primarily OpenAI and Azure private AI instances. So next 10 minutes or so, we're going to talk a little bit about the differences between the two and how those kind of compare and contrast. This is kind of our versus battle up here, where we have two different opinions of how that should go. You said in your LinkedIn post we were going to wrestle, so we might actually have to end up wrestling up here.
I don't have any jelly.
Okay. It's nice speaking with you today, Alden. I'm going to get off here before that goes any further. After that, we'll have some more collaborative slides. So,
go ahead.
You legitimately caught me off guard with that.
Thank you. Thank you. I try my best.
So first off, I think the first thing in everyone's mind is going to be data security. That's a pretty early question of whether or not you want to host this on your own infrastructure and if you want to trust someone else housing it. So start off by telling me a little bit about how your data security works in your self-hosted models.
Sure. So with my models, I run a server in our office, and then I have it cloned to a server at my house that we ingest all the data from our PSA into directly, via secure sockets. So we are taking a lot of CUI, a lot of PII, a lot of all the fun acronyms that we all hate, and I'm feeding it directly into the AI, which is something that I would tell all of you to not do if you're using OpenAI or Copilot or what have you, because there's a lot of data that we all have, and a lot of it, nobody really needs to have that data. Nobody needs to have access to that data, and ingesting it, being able to ask, say that Brandon's my client, he's having printer problems, and figuring out which of my texts works with Brandon all the time, and which one fixes his printer problems all the time, and can do that, is really nice for us. But that's a huge privacy issue and a huge security issue.
So how do those self-hosted models handle data at rest?
It exists within a Docker container that dies every night, and then daily I just re-ingest our entire PSA into it.
Okay. How long does that take?
About 45 seconds.
Not bad. I was expecting minutes.
Oh, I could make it longer if you want, but
Yeah. So the trick is you set it at 45 minutes, and then every week you decrease the sleep timer 1 minute, and then you go to your boss and you say, hey, I made some
Time
crazy
savings.
improvements this week.
Time savings.
Time savings, exactly. Alden's boss, just go ahead and forget the last 30 seconds of that. So on the same note of OpenAI hosting, so we are heavy users of Azure, Microsoft Azure. We love it. I think Azure is the right way of saying it. Azure is wrong. We had a whole discussion about this last night. If you want to talk more about it, you can come see me at my booth afterwards.
It's pronounced entree.
It rhymes with Majager. Thank you, Kelvin. I'm glad you appreciated that. So Azure OpenAI, they take some steps to assure the customers that it is not data that can be accessed by Microsoft unless in certain circumstances, with those being abuse reports for the platform and if there is a request for troubleshooting on the instance. And the way they accomplish that is basically with a stateless container for your specific model submissions. So basically, it's very similar to the self-hosted model, from what I understand from the docs, where it's not just sitting around in there. When you make a request to that, it is not feeding back to a public model. It is actually going to the underlying AI infrastructure, classifying it in the case of GPT, and sending it back. These use the exact same model deployments as ChatGPT, but as I hope we all know, ChatGPT does use some of the information that you send to it to ingest data into its own learning models. So you want to make sure that when you are sending stuff to online services, you're being very careful about what you're putting in there for that reason. But I trust Microsoft. Maybe I shouldn't. I went through a whole course on
I don't.
the pre-day that told me I shouldn't trust Microsoft. But
I
one of the
don't.
discussion points I want to bring up is kind of like, how do we define where that line is, where we're like, the docs say they're doing it this way. Can we actually believe they're doing it this way? And when is almost like too paranoid? Where do you think that line is?
And that's a difficult one for me because we are self-hosted, because we are doing everything internally. There's no data that's going over the line or over the pipe, over the tunnel, whatever. It's all internal. And so with our ingestion and with the fact that the server isn't reaching out and talking to anybody, I'm more than happy to say that Brandon's my customer, Brian's my customer, Elle's my customer, Tara's my customer. I'm more than happy to feed all that information because I know that it doesn't leave my house.
Okay. Now, speaking of getting data into it, how is that data ingestion working? Is it via front end? Do you have an API go into that model? And how are you linking that together?
So we are personally using a plugin for Uba Booga called Super Booga too.
Can you say that one more time, just closer to the microphone, please, so it gets picked up?
Uba Booga.
Okay. Plugin for?
Super Booga.
Okay.
2. And that ingests all of the API calls from Autotask into it and builds out the entire vector database that has all of our clients, all of our tickets, all of our audit trails, everything.
Okay. And what are you using to actually get that data ingested? Is it automation platform? Are you sending it through a workflow in Autotask?
It is through the front end of Uba Booga.
Okay. Interesting.
And every time I say that, everyone's gonna laugh.
No, this is why I love having these conversations with you. It's secretly because I love hearing you say that, and it's still the funniest thing ever to me.
It is a great project on GitHub, and if anybody is interested, I can get you guys going on it later today. But
awesome. So as far as hosted AI instances go, you do have an API available to you, and you do have a front end with Azure AI Studio. When you spin up a subscription for speech services, text services, vision services, or GPT, you do get somewhere where you can dev the prompts you're querying. So it's not meant to be used consistently, but it does provide you with some code samples as well to actually integrate into your system. We are using Roost at the moment to get all of our data ingested for the various functions we're using with it, and we'll kind of go into our favorite uses a little bit later in the slide deck here. But essentially, we have an action in Roost that is authenticated to send requests to it, and we have a system and a user message. The system message basically defines, here's what you're doing. You are an AI model that does this. You ingest ticket notes, you ingest voicemail call recordings, you take tier 1 tickets and give a suggestion of what to do. The user message is basically the chat you're sending to it to do something with that, the system message to do with. It's pretty straightforward. When you get back, you get a few different options depending on your settings. You have options to tweak the temperature of it, which is something I won't go into up here because we want to make sure we have enough time to get everything. But you get back a message, and that's basically the message you'll see in the front end. So we're able to use Roost to translate that into different situations, get the data in a consistent format to feed in, and then take that message response out and then do something else with it.
Now what Brandon brought up and just kind of just grazed right over was the prompt, and that's really what matters is with AI having a good prompt. So, for an example, like saying you're a technician, solve this problem, is not a good prompt. But if you were saying like you're a senior engineer at an IT firm and you are mentoring an L1 and you want to assist them with the task but not do the task for them, give them five steps that you would try to resolve the issue, and from there, then also figure out how big of an issue it is and whether it needs to be escalated immediately.
Exactly. One thing that I love doing to make prompts is, and I love the recursiveness of this, use AI to generate AI prompts. Go to ChatGPT and say basically, hey, I'm trying to make a prompt for AI bot that does this. And it'll go back and forth with you. In fact, if you're using the public version of ChatGPT, there is the option to add your own custom GPT, and it's essentially doing that as far as I know. You tell it what you want it to do, and it'll kind of go through a few iterations to generate that prompt for you. There is a balance between it. You get a little bit too verbose and put too much rails on it, it's not going to do a whole lot of interpretation of what you're asking it. But you don't want to be so loose that it's just giving you random junk. One of the challenges we'll have, and we'll come back to that on the next slide, which is actually a perfect segue into our next slide of overcoming challenges. This slide has an alternate title of Addressing and Oven Messes with Adopt Sculpting AI. Challenge number 1, AI is not good at writing text. I'm going to leave this up here for the rest of the conversation, by the way. So one of the challenges is AI giving you an answer, whether or not it's correct. It's being tasked with saying something, and by God, it's going to say something to you. One of the challenges we had with one of our first implementations of doing a tier 1 helper bot was it giving some hilariously incorrect responses of what to do. One of those was a user is having problems getting Microsoft Authenticator installed on their phone for passwordless authentication. What can we do? The response was...
Reformat the phone.
Reformat the phone? No. It's even better than that. The response was disable MFA for the tenant. No MFA, no authenticator. Problem solved.
Oh, you have not been told to reinstall the operating system?
Yeah.
I've been told to install Gen 2, so I mean...
That's another debate. So tell me a little bit about some of your challenges, Alden.
Well, working with open source is obviously very fun for anyone here who is an open source junkie, because open source changes daily. That's part of the fun of it. So recently, the platform that I use, Ubabooga,
Thank you.
has changed their API to match OpenAI's API. Prior to that, they had their own API Swagger, which was great, except that I had probably 80 automations built out around their Swagger, and not the OpenAI Swagger. And so everything broke overnight, and it was beautiful. And by beautiful, I mean there was a few bottles of bourbon that fixed the issue.
It was beautiful by the end of those few bottles of bourbon, I'm sure.
It was wonderful. I was singing songs, we were dancing.
So while we're still blurring the line between the last slide, I'm going to bring this up again because I love how this fades in. One of the challenges that you may have on your self-hosted, and I'm totally picking on you right now, is the reliability infrastructure because you're hosting it yourself. What do you feel might be some unique challenges for you as far as hosted, where you're paying for someone else to run it on their systems because the cloud is just borrowing someone else's computer versus not borrowing Microsoft's computer and using your own?
You said it. So Microsoft has an immense amount of scalability due to their partnership with NVIDIA. If anyone is an AI aficionado, you guys may be familiar with like the HGX 200 series graphics cards that are mind-boggling. I don't own one of those. I own a Quadro A4000 or something, and it's really bad. So when I the TLDR is when I get a response, it takes like 30 seconds versus when he gets a response, it takes 3 seconds. And so the rate limiting and trying to chain things together gets really spicy because it starts to take a while.
Right. But then about how much do you pay per prompt?
0.
0 plus electricity.
I mean, yeah. So like $800 a month. But
What kind of computer are you using?
I live in California.
Okay. So that's the trade-off. When this is not unique to AI, this is just any cloud infrastructure. One of the benefits you get from cloud is you're using someone else's infrastructure, and that someone else is probably going to have a little bit more scalability, a little more fault tolerance. Raise your hand if you have a diesel generator, any of your client sites. If you run a data center, please don't raise your hand. What kind of client is it?
911 call center.
I should have ran this question past you before I asked it in front of 200 people, but I appreciate you having an edge case.
Sorry. Okay. Hello, I am Alden Wilson, Edge Case Master in the Roost Discord.
He's not joking. In the Roost Discord, his display name is Edge Case Master because he manages to find these edge cases.
Yes.
We'll have to talk later because that's an interesting use case. But yeah, so you are generally not going to have a diesel generator at most of your client sites. You're not going to have 4 redundant connections. You're not going to have on-site electricians to run through and diagnose these things, but you're going to pay for that. Using cloud services can totally be expensive, more expensive than housing stuff on premise, and they could be a little bit cheaper depending on how you deploy them, but you definitely want to keep that in mind. Whereas with your self-hosting, the trade-off on that is you're not paying as much, but you have to manage the infrastructure. So one of the things to figure out is basically how much would it cost you over your management to upkeep that, to make sure it's patched, to make sure the hardware is okay. What happens if something goes down? Are you just down and you lose out on that revenue? Or do you have a backup system, and how much does that backup system cost?
Do you have a brain surgeon who can fix a Linux machine? Because most of us, I don't want to speak for all of you, but I'm going to say most of us do not have a person who can pop into a Linux machine and fix an arbitrary issue just off the top.
Sometimes Azure goes wrong. Sometimes I get a notification saying that something went wrong with the host I'm on. The notification says, "We moved you to a new host. We're sorry you were down for 0.002 seconds."
Mine says time entry from Alden Wilson. I fixed it.
You fixed it. Yeah. So on this slide, key points we want to take up of this is essentially make sure that your prompts are engineered properly. Make sure that you're not exposing too much information, but you're not giving it too little either. Make sure you understand the challenges of what comes along with self-hosting and keeping that up versus what comes along with cloud, and make sure that you're putting rails on the spending as well.
And if you are using cloud, which I'll strongly promote using cloud because I want people to be using OpenAI or generative text in general. Make sure you're sanitizing your data.
Yes.
If you are giving it to a public entity, whether or not you trust them, sanitize your data.
We actually have a policy around that, and I think a policy in addition to some guardrails in whatever system you're using to sanitize that data is good. Our policy basically says you can ask it questions, but you need to make sure that it's anonymized. So instead of saying our client with this real client name is trying to do this, and us with this real MSP name is trying to do this, say our client referred to as client A is doing this.
Yeah.
Our MSP referred to as MSP A is doing this. Then you can just control F and replace it.
So like for example, I can tell OpenAI that Cynthia over here with sexing and oven misuse is having an issue and get an answer for Cynthia. But I wouldn't tell them it's Brandon with Centop because I care.
And that kind of goes back to as well, how much do you trust the data policies of your provider? We do allow in our policy, as long as it's sending to a private instance through the approved channels we have to account for this, you are allowed to submit some information. And finally, though, just like this, it's prone to hallucinations. It's prone to just making stuff up because it was told it needs to give you something and it's going to give you something. So don't always blindly trust it. One of the big points in our policy is you are not allowed to just straight copy paste stuff. You're not allowed to have ChatGPT write you an email and then just copy paste that email in, or a policy, or a quote, or anything. You need to look it over, and you probably need to change at least a few things out of it.
And ensure that you have a policy. If you are an MSP owner or a tech here, ensure that your MSP has an a generative AI policy in place, and make sure you're following it.
As a gift to all of you, I did actually get approval to open up our policy for AI usage and make it a green document that I can share with the community. I did already share it in MSP Geek, but to prevent you guys from having to dig through several days of messages, I'm going to go ahead and attach a link to it to the session in Whova after this. So please don't copy it word for word. Try to make it a little bit yours, but it's a good reference for you guys to kind of see what we're requiring internally and what we've built out.
Use Roost to replace his company name with yours.
So this is the fun slide. Favorite uses.
What is your favorite use that you've had so far? Which is a fantastic question to put someone on the spot of in front of this many people.
Is this MSP related or just in general? Because
Give me both.
meme generation, of course, negative time savings, but also automatically dispatching tickets that are high priority. When a customer will email in with a ticket that is very obviously high priority and does not need to sit in dispatch queue for 30 minutes, having that be read by GPT, having GPT be prompted that they are a dispatcher and that they are reading through this and determining on a scale of 1 to 5 how insane of an issue this is. If it catches like the whole company down, or QuickBooks, or I don't know, everything else that we all hate, it basically will P5 it or P1 it, and then it will automatically assign it to myself and the other L3 team, because there's no reason that somebody should be down for that long. And if a dispatcher can't get to it, then you've got a very unhappy customer who's been down for 30 minutes and not knowing why.
Right.
So you mentioned that the actual generation part of it is happening through the front end and the API that they have. How are you tying together that self-hosted AI front end with your PSA software and allowing it to change all those settings and dispatch that ticket out?
So I use this program called Roost.
Really?
I've never heard of it.
And I have this thing called a webhook. No, I have a webhook from Roost where any new tickets get automatically posted to my GPT server with a prompt with everything, like he was saying, temperature, but also top P, top K, a bunch of other variables. And then I have a separate GPT for dispatching, and then I feed it to that, and then basically whatever it returns gets fed back into the PSA. And if it's a 5, it on the urgency scale, if it's a 5 out of 5, it then immediately goes to L3.
Awesome.
Which is a crate that exists within Roost. But,
Yes, it is.
It requires some slight modification to work properly.
So that's a good point, though. When you're unpacking and using existing crates that are made for cloud, how much do you have to do to rearrange that, or are you just swapping out actions?
0. I've replaced the OpenAI integration in Roost with my own through some script foo, which is why I have negative time savings as well.
Yes, please bring back negative time savings to all the Roost employees here.
I have negative time savings. That's a secret.
If any Roost developers are watching this, please go ask Alden how he's doing that. I'm sure you'll be very intrigued to know.
No, Nick asked me not to talk about it.
All right. So some of the favorite uses we've had with it, and I'll do the same thing. I'll go with a what?
What are your favorite uses?
Okay. I just said I was going to start with that.
I know, but I was thinking it.
Okay. Ask me the question.
Sorry, I'm buffering. As an AI model, what are your favorite use cases of LLMs?
So for a work-related model, I have a big one, two big ones. And they're both kind of around when I put on my service as manager hat at the MSP eTop technology. ZenTop and eTop are related in case the names didn't give it away. So at the MSP, one of the things I need to do is make sure clients are happy and technicians are happy, because those two things are very closely related. What I can do is I can ask my AI bot, hey, here's a ticket number. How did this go? This is getting bubbled up to me because someone seems upset, or I'm getting it forwarded in from a manager. Give me just a top-level overview of what this looks like. That's going to actually take the ticket notes, package them up, and send them out to Azure OpenAI private instance to get a summary out of that. One of the challenges with that is the public instances do often have a limit of tokens. Tokens are a very elusive number where basically you put in a certain amount of text and characters and then you get a token out of those numbers. There is a way to calculate it. It's not super intuitive, but you do have to kind of keep that in mind. So I did have to figure out a way to calculate the max number of tokens I'm able to send to my public instance and split the messages up, send them separately, and then kind of recombine them at the end.
Don't try to figure out what tokens are. It sucks.
Out of that, though, I'm able to get a summary of the ticket notes, both internal and external. If you guys were on the rock call, I believe last week, we showed that off. But it does kind of show, hey, here's a executive overview of the ticket from a technical standpoint. Here is a customer service score, and here's how confident our technician was in resolving this issue, which is a very important metric. I want to make sure my team feels empowered and has enough information to solve an issue, and they're not using language in their communications that kind of feel like they're not really sure where to go, but they're just kind of throwing stuff to see what sticks, which is, at a certain point, a valid troubleshooting metric. But if we can educate and we can train, it makes our technicians that much more confident in their ability to help our team, and that really does come across to our customers as well. We have a very similar way of doing things on the phone calls as well. We use a VoIP provider where I can export a MP3 file of all of our calls. This call may be monitored or recorded for quality assurance purposes. We actually do something with that. We take those out and we run them through. So we can export a whole week's worth of calls, run it through the AI model, basically say, hey, pick me out 3 calls. 3 of the, not the worst calls, but the ones where they seemed unconfident or the customer seemed frustrated based off their language. This is using the Azure speech model. It's actually able to ingest a phone call and figure out not only what the text is and how confident it is at it, but which channel the speaker is on. It'll go back and forth and give you individual blocks for who is talking, and it's able to take that with a slightly modified prompt feeding through and giving those same sort of results. Go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, are you doing anything with your gosh, how do you word that? With your documentation platform, are you using that to potentially get solutions to issues without having to have your technicians pop into whatever documentation platform that we're using?
So at the moment, no. One of the challenges I've had with public models is ingesting large amounts of data and having it stored somewhere that can be quickly referenced. The way I'm thinking of solving that right now is having a few layers of classification as far as where this needs to go. Is this an internal documentation request? If it is, what area is it? Is it in software? Is it in networking? Is it in hardware? Okay, out of that, then what system is related to it? Almost like a type an item in our PSA. Then we have a much smaller list of documents we can pull from an Azure table, just a title and the URL slug to our Hoodoo instance. From there, we can just selectively pull a smaller number of information rather than always ingesting our entire documentation platform. But to be honest with y'all, it's not finished yet, so I can't talk a whole lot about that.
It's very fun.
It is very fun.
Once you fall into the rabbit hole, if any of you guys are interested in falling in the rabbit hole, it is a very, very deep rabbit hole, and you probably want to take the red pill eventually.
So as far as personal uses, I'm using it to get fit. If anyone has seen me speak about a year ago, I was probably around 30 pounds rounder last December, and losing weight is harder than I thought it was going to be. This is not a weight loss talk, but it is a lot of components from exercising, what kinds of exercises to do, making sure you're not losing any muscle mass because you're dieting too hard, what kind of diet to have. If you're taking something out, you need to supplement it somewhere else. And then what do I even need to buy to make that work? So I've been using ChatGPT to write meal plans for me, to write workout plans. My business partner BJ is doing the same with his workout plans. I'll say, hey, I have this in my fridge. What can I make with this that's healthy, that stays below my calorie target for the day so I stay in a deficit, but not so much so that I start losing muscle mass and running into potential injuries when I'm going to the gym or running or doing these things? What ratio of cardio to strength training should I be using? There is a wealth of information on the internet that I can pull from to pull those out. I'm not saying use ChatGPT for medical advice. Please don't do that.
I was about to say to do that. So the last conference I went to, I went to a great keynote by Dave Coles, and one of his points was that everybody should have a therapist, if not three. And so I have trained a ChatGPT 4.0 model as a therapist, and it's fantastic.
Explains a lot.
Who said that? Dave. Okay. Everyone stand up so they know what you look like. Do a spin around.
But for like 20 cents a month, having a third therapist is very nice.
So a key thing there is third. This is, and I mean that as both an insult and a segue because you're pretty cool.
Yikes. Yikes.
This is now a Bully Alden session. No.
Wow.
My point I was trying to make is you do have a actual professional looking over it. This should be used as general guidance. In my case, I generally can know how many calories is enough calories. If it tells me to eat 700 calories in a day, I know that's not enough. I can cross-reference it. I can look up based on my height and my weight and my body fat index, basically how many calories is the minimum amount of calories I need to get roughly. So I can cross-reference it. If I'm doing a bunch of exercises, it's like, yeah, just do like 100, 300-pound curls. Like I can't even do one of those.
And I don't know if any of you guys saw the Google AI failures from last month.
Yes. I don't know if it's still broken, but if you ask Google AI how many rocks you should be eating a day, it does suggest you start eating at least 4 pebbles a day, and you mix it in with yogurt to make it easier to eat those pebbles.
The one that I was thinking of is probably one that there's the I'm feeling sad one.
Yes. Let's gloss over that one. But
yeah,
if you know if you know that prompt, you know.
It did a great job of referencing Reddit.
Yeah.
That's all that needs to be said.
So, what's up with the future? What do we see coming next?
Gosh.
What do you see coming next as far as self-hosted language models?
A lot. Honestly, as I learn more and more about how vector databases work, which if anybody wants to talk to me about that, don't. But as I learn more and more about how they kind of work, I have been learning about more agent-based AI stuff, which is what OpenAI has been trying to implement, which is basically having a AI model that then reaches out to 8 different AI models and has them then reach out to a tree of 8 more to accomplish a task, and figure out the best results, and then summarize them into the child. But you've got a team of experts essentially that are doing things, and I see that blowing up. There's actually a big project for MSPs that I can't recall the name of right now, but hit me up later and I'll find it. But it is agent based, and so instead of just one model, it has multiple that spread off and really kind of do every task and then come back with proper results. Because all generative AI is it gets the first word and then it guesses the next word and the next word and the next word. But that's the future for me is being able to have 26 bots do the same thing at once.
Awesome. Yeah, as far as cloud hosted, we're already seeing some of the gaps in just performance between every single iteration of ChatGPT. Think of ChatGPT 3, 3.5 to 4 to 4.0. I believe the full name is 4 Omni. Whenever I say 4.0, it's like, is it an O? Is it a 0? We need that line through it. But it's iterating really fast. That's a good thing, and that's also kind of a scary thing. I think we're going to see a lot more people relying on AI for things that they probably shouldn't be relying on it for. As I mentioned on my last panel yesterday, you can't use automation to fix a process or a people issue, and you can't use AI to fix a process or a people issue either, I don't think. There's a lot of companies who are adding just AI to the end of their product name and shoving in just a standard ChatGPT API access to their existing app without a care in the world of what it's doing with it, how it's doing it, or any sort of monitoring. And we're going to start seeing, I think, some potential drawbacks of the overuse of it.
I mean, especially with the recent announcement of Copilot recall, which if you are in the security sector, you understand the issues there. Please disable that if you are an MSP.
Yes.
That's all I will say.
So I believe they did actually recall the recall, and it's not going to be enabled by default now. It was initially only going to be on the Copilot Plus enabled devices that Windows Microsoft was promoting, and it was going to be on by default. So you want to keep an eye out for, like, is there AI usage being put into my products that I'm using that I don't want and I don't need to know about? I think companies really need to be a lot more straightforward about disclosing when they are adding stuff. Microsoft had a big conference about AI and stuff, and it was really newsworthy because it was like, hey, Microsoft's going to basically just install a keylogger in your computer, and they're going to store it in a SQLite database that anyone can get access to. In fact, here's a Python script someone wrote that's less than 100 lines long, and you just type in a keyword like password, and it's going to give you back all of the text from the OCR screenshots.
Or you walk around Best Buy with one of these and you grab all of them.
Is that a weapon of mass destruction, sir?
No, it's my key to my room.
It's your Tamagotchi.
It's my key to my room. But the other thing, touching on that, is also I don't think any of us were really aware that Microsoft was watching all of our emails and Word documents and Excel and SharePoint for like the past year. And then we were made aware of that, and it's really nice. You can reference things. I can ask how much that I was going to pay Brandon to work for me, but because I don't remember, but Copilot
Not
sure
enough.
Does. Copilot sure does. But that was kind of rude, and it's scary because you do need to know, where you're being, where your data is being ingested. By AI companies who think that they are doing the right thing.
Right. Exactly. Did anyone else appreciate this SpongeBob screenshot as much as I did when I was putting it on my slide? Anyone? Okay, cool. I was hoping there would be some people. I found someone, I'm 25, and I found someone who's my age who has never seen SpongeBob before. I don't think boo is the right response. I was more of confusion.
Wait, you said you've never seen it before?
No, I've seen it. I had a SpongeBob bedsheet when I was a kid. Pillows, comforter, like...
You didn't have a race car?
I wasn't cool enough for a race car bed.
Now, we got 5 minutes left. We went a little fast.
Actually, no, we are right on schedule because I want to leave time for questions.
I do too, yeah. I was about to pull up the Q&As, but...
Let's leave the SpongeBob slide up while we do questions.
Are you sure you don't want to go to the previous one?
This is fine.
I kind of like our automation guy.
You like adopt scopting? All right, fine. There we go.
I hesitate to interrupt.
If anyone's been in a meeting
I was
with
not
the two of us,
buffering or
it's
caching.
like
I
that.
was observing. First of all, before questions, thank you guys. That was awesome. It's fantastic. We got 4 minutes left. I have 20 questions. Anyone want to ask first? All right, I'll open the first question. And you guys can say, I don't care to discuss that. I don't care about that, whatever, because it's a little bit different than what you presented. But you did mention Microsoft and these PCs, and the AI PCs are coming based on announcements with all the PC vendors and announcements with Qualcomm and the Dragon chip. That's coming. Then Apple announces AI for iPhone, iEverything. That's coming. Does any of it really make a difference for the end customers out there? I mean, how much do you think of this is vaporware with no real ROI? Or do you think there's going to be some dramatic impact on these mobile devices and desktop devices, and you may not even have to go out to the cloud or host it?
Yeah. So how many of you guys have an iPhone in here? And how many of you use Siri? How often is Siri correct? How often does Siri know what you're talking about? I think it's more of marginal gains that are going to make the difference with that. With Apple Intelligence, which I still find a hilarious backronym for AI, because it had to put the Apple stamp on it. But I think there's more everyday uses, and a lot of it is gimmicky. But I think of things where you can essentially go and, like, you take a picture of someone, and there's someone else walking in the background, or someone's dog or something. You can circle it and say, take it out. One of the very common requests I see is there's a picture of a family member who may no longer be with the person who's posting the picture, and there's something wrong with it. And they post and they ask, can someone in Photoshop please fix this one corner of the picture? And I think that could be a use that people find really good strength out of in ways that you wouldn't expect. Another good one is kind of quieting the noise and notifications. A lot of phones now have a method to put custom focus modes on, like work mode or sleep mode. One of the things Apple is doing, and I'm talking about Apple because I just watched their keynote for WWDC, but it's allowing you to categorize. He uses iPhone, he uses Android. I use iPhone.
Yeah, well, don't make me look bad. Come on.
Hey. But it allows you to go ahead and get a rough classification of what notifications are important, what's critical. So it's less rule-based and more of like, hey, like we're just going to silence everything unless we think it's worth it, which could be another drawback if it misclassifies that and something critical comes in and it gets silenced. But I think it's really early on, and it kind of reminds me of the deep integration we're seeing is very similar to how things felt when AI itself was becoming just a more research-based thing.
So I actually want to touch on this one in a weird way that also touches on the challenges. Is as MSPs, we probably have a few customers who have asked us if they can have Copilot Plus or Copilot 365 or whatever the heck they're calling it. One of the Copilots. But as an MSP, do you want to sell a product that you don't know how it works? Because I personally don't. And
It's magic.
it's math.
So it's magic.
It's all a math problem. But the thing is, if we as MSPs don't understand what we're doing with this and don't understand how to prompt, and we just give it to a customer and we say, you're paying $300 a year for AI, like, go to town. It kind of sucks because you're not able to be a consultant, which at the end of the day, a lot of us are consultants for our clients. And if you can't teach your client how to properly prompt it, and instead they just ingest everything in there and then do bad things, you're not setting a great example.
Yeah. Well, I want to be respectful to the next
Yes.
presenter.
Yeah.
I know we're at about the top of our time here. My clicker's not working because Visual Studio Code really wants to do an update right now. But thank you. These are QR codes. Snap them all you can. I'm going to take a quick selfie with the audience because I want to.